I'm still waiting. Okay, I'm still waiting because I realized there are only 13 participants, and normally there are many more. So today I need to leave a little earlier. So we are going to see how we are going to be able to conclude with the material, but we are going to go on, and I'm trying to do my best. Okay, so still we are waiting for further students to join. I would like you to open the two links I have sent in the chat box. If you cannot open them directly, then you are kindly requested to copy them into the browser. I've got two documents from the World Trade Organization, which is I'm going to download it myself, which is the World Trade Statistical Review. And actually, this is what I didn't have any time for last week. And the other document I have sent is the ILO Monitor COVID-19 and the World of Work, 7th edition. So actually, this was issued in January. So I would like you to copy these two documents into the browser. So the one is the World Trade Statistical Review, and the other one is the ILO Monitor COVID-19 and the World of Work 7th edition. And we are going to cover those two today as far as we can, okay, as far as we can. So I'm asking you to kindly copy these links to your browser. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start. And first and foremost, I would like you to open the World Trade Statistical Review. And it refers to the year 2020. So I am only going to explain theoretical backgrounds based on this document, and I tell you why. Because last week we have understood the collapse of global value chains. And as international trade is conducted within the value chains, or I would say 70% of the international trade is conducted within global value chains, obviously the shrinking of global value chains hits the international trade severely. Last week, we were going through a document which was published in early 2021. So for this reason, and it has been already uploaded to the Moodle system. So for this reason, I don't want to go through numbers again, especially numbers that refer to the year of 2019, because that wouldn't make any sense. However, each and every year, when the document is really accurate and up to date, it is always accurate. However, when it is up to date, I do tend to go through the World Trade Statistical Review with students. I would like you to open the World Trade Statistical Review, and I'll explain you what I normally cover with students, and I'll explain you what I would like you to have a look at, which is interesting and relevant for you. So actually, if you scroll down the World Trade Statistical Review, nothing is going to be compulsory material. So absolutely nothing is going to be compulsory material. We are going to have a look at the statistical table starting on page 76. But before we go there, before we go to the statistical tables, which are hugely relevant, I would like you to go down, please, to page, I'll tell you which one immediately, page 14. So page 14 in the counting. And actually, this is what I would like to show you right now. There are two charts, chart 2.5 and chart 2.6. I would like you to have a look at these charts because the reason is as follows. On the left-hand side, you can see the merchandise traders and their rankings in two separate years. One is 2009 and the other one is 2019. The other chart refers to commercial services and traders equally their rankings in 2009 and in 2019. So actually, why I would like you to have a look at this chart, because you are going to realize that you are going to understand that it is not only, global value chains that are summarizing 70% of the international trade, but it is actually countries that are summarizing the majority, 50 or 10 countries actually are responsible for 50% of the international trade. You are going to see it on page 83. So we are going to jump immediately to page 83. But before we go there, and before we realize that actually half of the international trade, especially in merchandise trade, is concentrated within 10 countries, there are brilliant performers who have improved their rankings within 10 years. And as far as for merchandise trade, the countries that have improved their rankings massively are Hong Kong, Korea, Mexico, India, Switzerland, Poland, Vietnam, Malaysia, Turkey, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Philippines, the Slovak Republic, Romania, Iraq, Israel, Argentina, Nigeria, Ukraine, and Qatar. In terms of services, these countries are China, Ireland, Singapore, India, Korea, Luxembourg, the Emirates, Thailand, Poland, Chinese Taipei, Turkey, Israel, Indonesia, Philippines, Qatar, Romania, Macau, Vietnam, and Nigeria. Some of these countries, for instance, China, are anyhow included into the top 10 traders of the globe, but many are not. And there are some countries that are members of the Eastern European group, of the Central Eastern European group of the European Union, namely the V4 countries. But some countries are listed among the ASEAN countries. And according to Jim O'Neill, they are also listed among the next 11 countries. So I only would like to tell you that international trade is hugely important. You are going to see how important it is. And you are going to see that it is heavily concentrated, and it has been heavily concentrated among top 10 traders for decades now. However, it is possible to jump. So it is possible to jump through the inclusion to global value chains. And these have been the great jumpers. So these have been the great improvers that, by being members of global value chain systems, manage to facilitate and improve their performance in international trade, thus in the generation of GDP. The other picture or the other image I would like you to have a look at is on page 18. So it is on page 18. We have already covered this topic last week. So we have already covered this topic last week. But each and every year, there is a chart which defines world merchandise trade and the real GDP growth and their interlink. So what I would like to show here that normally, under normal circumstances, the growth of the international trade is double of the real GDP. It is hugely important because if trade doesn't grow, then the GDP obviously doesn't grow either. So if you have a look at of the supply side of the GDP, which is obviously the income, so the global income or a regional integrations income or a national income, that's the supply side. And the demand side is obviously consumption, investment, government expenditures, and the trade balance. So actually, the trade balance has a massive influence on the performance of the GDP, which automatically means that if world trade collapses or for any reason it goes to a halt, then it has a huge and a massive negative impact on the global GDP growth. So this interlink is explained here in chart 3.1, and actually it is depicted for each and every year. It is written, obviously, the growth of the trade, the growth of the GDP, and with the dotted lines and with a continuous line, you can see averages of 10 years. So actually, it is quite interesting because in the last 10 years, the ratio, the 1-to-2 ratio of the GDP and the world trade hasn't been present. So the natural, healthy 1-to-2 ratio of the GDP and the world trade hasn't been present. And actually, the GDP was growing basically with the same pace as trade would go or as trade used to go. However, I only would like to attract your kind attention to this chart, and I would like to recommend you to read it each and every year because it is substantial information. And I'm not going to go from here on because this information is not relevant anymore. So we have covered it last week. However, what is important is the statistical tables. And I am asking you to kindly go to page 83. So page 83, I am asking you to kindly go to page 83. Actually, if you look at the table A7, I'm asking you because I'm talking to an empty wall. Do you get me? Do you get me? Do you know where we are?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So if you go to page 83, then I'm asking you to kindly look at table A7. I'm explaining what's written here and what I would like to tell you. So basically, here we go. It is the leading exporters and importers in world merchandise trade, excluding the intra-EU trade in 2019. This is one of the reasons why I was dropping this document, because everything refers to 2019. However, this is substantial information because it excludes intra-EU trade, and it shows the world's biggest exporters and biggest importers. And if you look at the chart, so if you have a look at the chart, it is hugely interesting because the biggest exporter of the world is China. So the biggest exporter of the world is China. Actually, China covers 16% or even over 16% of the global exports. On the second place, it is the European Union. So the European Union covers more than 15% of the global exports. And obviously and non-surprisingly, the United States of America is the third biggest exporter in the world with over 1,600 billion US dollars. China, the European Union, and the United States are followed by Japan, around 700 billion, and obviously South Korea, which is a newly industrialized economy, which did catch up to the most developed parts of the world, along with Hong Kong, that is also performing around $500 billion. So actually, when we were speaking about the newly industrialized economies, then we were touching upon microeconomic indicators in which these countries have managed to reach or even outperform developed parts of the world. Hong Kong and Korea are marvelous examples of the latter. So Hong Kong and Korea basically did catch up to, obviously not to Japan, but did outperform many developed countries of the world, namely the United Kingdom, Canada, Switzerland, the Emirates, Australia, and so on and so forth. So they belong to the 10 biggest exporters of the world. Once more, if you have a look, then actually the China and the European Union cover over 30% of the global exports. If you add the United States of America, then that's massively over 40. If you add Japan, that's 45, well over 45. And if you add Korea and Hong Kong, that's over 50. So this is why I was telling you that basically less than 10 countries, and it is always like that year by year, less than 10 countries or economic integrations rule the world and basically give 50% of the global exports. The same goes for imports. I don't want to bore you with the figures on imports because the situation is very similar, so you can read yourselves. However, what I would like you to see and have a look at, please have a look at China. I would like to pick out selectively China, the European Union, and the United States, and even Japan. But then we are going to go to another chart when it breaks down the European Union to different countries. However, this chart is better to explain the theory that I would like to touch upon. And the theory is as follows. Obviously, we do understand now that exports entail imports. So there are no exports without imports because we are thinking within the framework of global value chains. So in most of the cases, especially in developing countries, a certain product, a certain particle is imported, value is added, and then it is being exported. So it is inconceivable to have exports without imports. Imports are the normal of the 21st century. However, we need to have a look at the numbers, because if you look at the trade of China in 2019, then you will see that actually China exported around $2,500 billion. And if you go to the other side of the chart, so if you go to the import side of the chart, then you will see that China basically imported around 2,000 or $2,100 billion. If you match the two figures, if you match the two numbers, then you will see that China actually benefited from the international trade, and the net benefit of China in the year of 2019 was around $400 billion. $400 billion. I would like to stop here for a moment to understand this amount of money. In Hungary, we've got a goal, an achievement, a standard each and every year in terms of which we are trying to attract foreign direct investments into our country. If we are lucky, obviously Hungary is a tiny country and cannot be compared to China in no terms. However, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in Hungary we are very happy to receive $5 billion, five altogether, $5 billion FDI per year. So actually $400 billion that are basically benefited from the flows of international trade is magnificent. And I would like to tell you and share with you that interestingly, China is not obviously it is the exporter of the world, but China's GDP is primarily not driven by exports. China's GDP is primarily driven by consumption. So actually, China is basically unstoppable, which can be seen through these or via these figures. If you have a look at the European Union exports around $2,400 billion. I have rounded up the number. And the European Union imports around $2,200 billion. I have again rounded up the number. Anyhow, the European Union as a unified regional integration gains over $200 billion on international trade. Obviously, it was pre-Brexit data. So this is pre-Brexit data. So these $200 billion that are gained by international trade is broken up or was broken up by 28 countries. However, the European Union as a single trader in the world it has huge benefits and is responsible for 15% of the exports and 13% of the global imports respectively. I will go on to the United States and then I will explain. So I will go on to the United States and I will explain. Equally, and I would like to show you that the United States of America exports around $1,550 billion and imports around 2,550. So I'm just rounding up the numbers, $billion, which means that the United States of America loses on international trade massively at that. So without taking sides, so I'm just not taking sides, I'm just telling you that if a political rhetoric is born, so if a political rhetoric is born, entailing that China's exports are detrimental to the United States, it is driven by these facts that actually, if we only look at imports and exports, then we realize that actually the United States of America is not a net beneficiary of international trade. However, what I would like to show you, actually, Japan slightly benefits. You will see Korea equally benefits around $100 billion and so on and so forth. So actually, you can realize how much money, what kind of benefit any country is deriving from international trade. What I would like to do here is as follows. This class is obviously on global economics, not on international organizations, and not on international organizations that are handling international trade or investments. However, what I would like to show you is that the World Trade Organization, that is a much beleaguered organization for international trade. You might remember the class when I was explaining to you on how the International Trade Organization did not come into existence with the Bretton Woods system, and how the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs came to existence. And I also explained that basically the World Trade Organization or its predecessor, the GATT system, would benefit the developed countries of the world. And it was always beleaguered because of its bias by the developing countries, so the middle income or the low income economies. However, we need to understand that world trade is highly concentrated, and actually those are writing the rules who are basically the greatest participants of international trade on both sides, on both exports and import sides. And please don't get me wrong, I am not taking a side now. I'm just explaining that the reason for developed countries dominating the regulation of international trade is rooted in this chart, that basically international trade is heavily concentrated. And again, we mustn't forget for a single minute that actually international trade is trade within global value chains, and countries are only facilitating these processes with their regulation schemes. I would like you, before we go on, I would like you to go back to page 82, please. So just go back one page, please, to table A6. It is the same chart. So it is the same chart. The only difference is that the European Union is not treated as an entity. However, the European Union basically acts as an entity within the World Trade Organization. So it has unified customs borders. But actually, the World Trade Organization does us a favor, and it basically explains international merchandise trade by countries in the year 2019. And if you look at this chart, then you will realize that there is a slight change. So a slight change in the rank. You will see that the greatest exporters of the world are China, the United States of America, Germany, the Netherlands, Japan, France, Korea, Hong Kong, Italy, the United Kingdom, Mexico, Canada, Belgium, Russian Federation, Singapore, Spain, and so on and so forth. The theory doesn't change. So the theory doesn't change, especially because, as I told you, the European Union acts as a single entity on global trade platforms. It is a very interesting research topic. So if you would like to carry out research work on your own country, it is very interesting to find out which are the most important exporters and who are the most important trading partners. Okay. Before we go on, I'm asking you if you've got any questions at this point. For the exam, I would like you to have a look at those two charts, please. So table 83 and 82, pages 83 and 82. And now I am asking you if you've got any questions or comments regarding those. Do you understand me? You
Yes.
understand me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. Very good. Okay. What I would like to show you, it is not going to be compulsory material. I'm just showing you what we already know and what we have realized last week. Table 8 and Table 9. So Table 8 and Table 9 are covering international exports, so of commercial services, and obviously imports as well. So Table 8 and Table 9 are covering the exports and imports of commercial services. The pattern is the same. So on page 84, the chart is without the European Union, so it is single countries. And if you scroll down to page 85, it is again with the European Union. What I would like to show you, I am now on page 85, and you are going to see what you already know, that the European Union is the biggest service exporter of the world and the biggest service importer of the world, followed by the United States of America. Then you can see that in terms of services, commercial services, China ranks on place 4. However, India comes up to place 5. And if you look at the list of the countries without the European Union, I mean, on page 84, China is equally on place 5, ranked 5, preceded by the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and so on and so forth. The difference between merchandise trade and commercial services is that in the past 25 years, developing countries have been overtaking developed countries in terms of exports of merchandise trade. However, with the exception of China, because China is massively present, and with the exception of India, the list is still very much ruled by developed countries of the world. So in terms of trade in commercial services, it is still the developed countries of the world that are dominating the list. So this is all I would like you to know for the exam, that while in terms of international merchandise trade, there has been a huge regrouping that I was showing you at the very beginning of the document. So there were the big jumpers. In terms of international services, it is still the developed countries that are ruling the world. Obviously, the amounts, the total amounts, are much less than in merchandise trade. And from here on, it is absolutely not compulsory material. I am only attracting your kind attention to the tables, specifically, I'll tell you in a minute. Yeah, I'm going down to, hang on, sorry. I'll find which ones. Hang on, I need to find it myself. Because actually what I'm doing now is I'm scrolling down in terms of products. So for instance, chemicals, automobiles, textiles, and so on and so forth, clothing, and so on and so forth. But this is not what I wanted to show you. This is also interesting if you are doing research services. However, what is really important, and I was looking for the chart, is the region. It is page 108. So this is page 108. Again, it is not compulsory material. So it is not compulsory material. But if you have a look at this chart, then you are going to see that in terms of exports, North America was responsible for 17% of the international trade, South and Central America for approximately 5%, Europe 38 almost, the Commonwealth of Independent States 1.8, Africa 3.5, Middle East 5.4, and Asia 29.6. So actually, the European Union, North America, and Asia are the most important exporters of the world. And if you look at the chart, the same refers to imports. So again, I'm not going to ask in the question, in the exam, this question. However, I find it very interesting that the geographical concentration of international trade can be also tracked down. If you scroll down in these statistical annexes, which are very, very interesting, then you will find that there is also a compilation for the regional integrations of the world. So if you go down, then on page 126, you are going to see the regional integrations of the world. So how much trade is conducted within regional integrations of the world. Actually, for the long run, not for the exam, but for the long run, it is very interesting to understand how much the regulation of regional integrations, the local content requirements, influence the international trade and the attraction of foreign direct investments. Okay, so this is all I would like to, or I intended to tell you about international trade. So what we have covered last week and what we have covered now will be absolutely sufficient for the exam. And I would like to go on now to the labor market. However, I'm going to stop for questions because it is a huge chunk of material. So it is a huge chunk of material, and this is why I'm asking if you've got any questions. So if you've got any extra questions that you would like to ask. Are we good?
Yes, personally, I don't have any questions for now.
Okay, so I'm going to the ILO document. I'm asking you to kindly open the ILO Monitor COVID-19 and the World of Work. Okay, so the World of Work, this is the 7th edition. This documentation was published on the 25th of January 2021. Have you got it? Has everyone opened the document? Yes. Have you got it? Is it open? It is 36 pages. However, I'm not going to ask for everything included into this document, so I'm just asking you if you've got it. Can you answer my question, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you've got it. Okay. So before we read the entire document, so before we understand, because I'm going to explain, I would like you to go, because it is quite confusing, and I would like to make it as clear as possible. So I would like you to go down to page 9. So I would like you to go down to page 9, please, okay? Because at the bottom of the page 9, on the left-hand side, so on the left-hand side, there is a figure that you are very kindly asked to know. And this is about global unemployment. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to be lost in the numbers. And it is quite a long document. It is very sufficient. So this document is very helpful, very good. But this is a very long document, and I don't want you to be lost in numbers. The point is that we have already understood that global active, so the number of the global active workforce is 3.5 billion. So 3.5 billion people in the world are participating, or I'm going to refine my sentence, are capable of participating in the labor market. Unemployment is a huge problem. And actually, I'm going to be very honest with you. In the past few years, so when I'm teaching the labor market to the students, then I'm always touching upon ILO's World Economic and Social Outlook. So I'm always touching upon ILO's World Economic and Social Outlook. What I would like to show you here right now, is that the World Economic and Social Outlook was unfortunately only published in January 2020. So it doesn't really say anything. About the crisis, about the downturn that was caused by the pandemic. So the problem is you cannot find out decent information from the Global Economic and Social Outlook. What I would like to show you that if you go through the Global Economic and Social Outlooks, then you will understand that global unemployment was around 190 million always between 2000 and 2020. So there were about 190 million unemployed people. There have been always since 2000. And actually the question was if it is 187 million or 192 million. What we unfortunately know by now, and that is a huge tragedy, that actually unemployment has risen by 33 million from last year to this year. And actually, it is impossible to treat it because throughout the pandemic, 33 million people have lost their jobs. However, it is even worse than that. So it is even worse than that, and I'm going to go to the top of the page. If you have understood that there are 220 million people unemployed in the world right now, and 33 million of these people lost their jobs last year, then I would like you to go back to page 1, please. So I am asking you to kindly go back to page 1, please, okay? And on page 1, you are going to see the title of figure 1. It refers to the estimates of the working hours, employment, and labor income loss in 2020 and its projections for 2021. Actually, it is explained that there is a huge unemployment. 33 million people have lost their jobs. But I would like you to have a look at the box beneath, so just under the shift to unemployment. Because actually the real tragedy is that many people have shifted into inactivity, which means they refuse to take part in the labor market. They have lost hope. And actually it is primarily women and the young generation. So many people you are going to see in this document, for instance, students just like you, choose to stay in the education system, whatever level, because they find it impossible to enter the labor market. What I would like to show you, that there is an unemployment growth by 33 million people. There is an inactivity growth by 81 million people. That's altogether 14 million employment loss. That's huge. Actually, we need to add to the fact that working hours were also lost in 2020, which means many people have managed to attain their workplaces, so they have still retained their workplaces. However, if you count this 8.8% loss in the working hours into jobs, into vacancies themselves, then you will understand that actually 255 million jobs were lost last year. FTE means full-time equivalent. So actually, if we are recounting part-time workers or all those who have reduced working hours because of the crisis, then you will understand that actually there was a 255 million job loss in 2020, which is actually translated into a labor income loss of around 4 trillion US dollars. So I know that I'm a university scholar, and I should be able to deliver you answers to your questions, but the only thing I can deliver to you is information. So actually, this job loss has been unprecedented in the times of human history and global economics. So I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't think that international organizations or governments have real answers to this loss, because I'm going to be very honest with you. Throughout the previous crisis in 2008, the global economic downturn, 60 million jobs were lost. And within the time span of 10 years, so between 2008 and 2008, the world was unable to cover for those losses. So the world was unable to compensate within 10 years. So I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't know. I really, really don't know how we are going to go on and how the world is going to compensate for these job losses. What I would like to show you, I would like you to scroll down. Actually, unemployment rates, so the growth of unemployment rates can be translated into 3 different phenomenons. And one is unemployment itself. So one is unemployment itself. 2 is inactivity, the total loss of hope in the labor market. And the 3rd one is the shrinking of global working hours. So what I would like to underline here, and what I would like you to know for the exam, it is not only the unemployment itself that grew by 33 million in last year, but the whole package. And the whole package means the growth of basically inactivity, unemployment, and the shrinking, the decreasing of working hours. Actually, for 2021, there are some positive projections, so not the entire picture is gloomy. But again, as we saw last week for international trade and foreign direct investment, that actually it depends on 2 different things. So it depends on 2 different things. One is the sector. So for instance, the ICT sector, the financial sector, and insurance activities were gaining momentum, and people employed along these sectors are quite lucky. Whereas, as you know, the auto or even food, so food production. However, at the other side of the 6 food services, so not food production, but services, accommodation, arts, culture, the automotive industry, have experienced major losses. So unemployment depends on the sector. So on one hand, it is very important to understand that unemployment depends on the sector. And the other thing is that we need to deeply understand is the geographical composition. So it depends where we are in the world. Latin America, you will see there's going to be a map on page 5. So there is a map on page 5, and you will realize that the South American continent, especially the Pacific region, was massively hit by working hour losses. And equally, the South Asian continent, so South Asia as a region, was massively hit by working hour losses. So it depends on the region. Some parts of the world were faring quite okay, so quite all right. What I would like to tell you that actually the crisis would hit different shares of the labor market. I mean, different segments of the labor market. And the most severely hit segments of the labor market were the young workers, so those between 15 and 24 who are just entering the labor market, who lost hope. And this is why I told you that actually many young people choose to stay in the education system because they are disillusioned and they don't want to enter the labor market. The second big segment is women. So women who are losing their jobs. There is a huge theory behind this fact explaining that women are basically the buffers of the labor market. When they are needed, then they are welcome to take the brunt of the work. However, when it is a global downturn, then they are easily laid off and they are easily sent basically away to suffer from underemployment, unemployment, loss of working hours, and so on and so forth. The self-employed have lost their jobs. The self-employed are tiny, micro or small enterprises. As we know, they are the most fragile to economic crises. So the self-employed tiny enterprises have obviously lost their jobs. And equally, low and medium skilled workers, so the less skilled an employee is, the more fragile and the more vulnerable she or he is to labor market layoffs. So actually, it is the young people, the inexperienced, women, the self-employed, and the low and medium skilled workers that were hugely affected by the crisis. I would like to stop here for a moment, and I'm going to tell you that I'm very sorry. At 3 o'clock, I need to wrap up. We've got a very important conference, and this is why I need to leave the class. But next week I'm going to, so within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to have you got a class after me? Have you got a class after 4:30?
Yes.
Yes.
When is your
at 3:40, right after your class?
3:40?
Yeah.
Right after my class?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, which class is it?
It's a gender studies class.
Gender studies. Okay, so what we are going to do right now, because at 3 o'clock I need to leave, but what we are going to do in the next 3 weeks, I'm going to extend the class by 10 minutes and then we can gain back time, okay? So in the next 3 weeks, I'm going to extend the class by 10 minutes and then we are going to make up for this loss, what we lose right now. But unfortunately, I really need to go. So I'm going to wrap up this sentence and then I'm going to leave. So the situation is as follows. We have understood the problem of young workers, women, self-employed people, and low and medium skilled workers. There is one more thing we need to understand. 40% of the global labor force is anyhow affected by the so-called vulnerable employment, which means they are more often than not family workers that are not working on a contractual basis. Basically, these are informal workers working for family enterprises or organized by one member of the family. So actually, this global economic downturn that heavily impacted the labor market came to a world of work where the employees, the physically employed, I mean, not physical workers, but effectively employed people, so who were effectively working, were actually affected by vulnerable employment. 40% of the employees were so-called vulnerable employees. So actually, what I am trying to convey to you is the fact that this economic downturn that we are facing right now did not hit a stable, a balanced work of work. It did hit a very unbalanced, a very fragile, a very vulnerable condition of employment. And actually, it did make it even worse. So I'm very sorry for being that gloomy, because I'm very optimistic generally, and I do trust that we are providing you decent education and that you are going to come off very well in the end. So I'm very, very sorry to conclude on a negative note. I'm asking you if you've got questions right now, and if it is okay with you, then in the next 3 weeks we are going to make it 10 minutes longer, and then we are going to be happy, and then we are going to make up for today. Is it okay with you?
Yes.
Is it
Yes.
okay?
Yes,
Okay, so I do thank for your kind attention. I really do thank for your kind attention, and I'm going to switch now. And thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you very
Okay, have a
much.
nice day.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank
Bye.
you.